Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining in. Today we'll be having a webinar on SPOR data governance, and we are going to start. So before we do, a few housekeeping notes. Please note that this session is being recorded, and the recording will be made available through EMA corporate website and on the YouTube channel. Please mute yourselves throughout the presentation. I think we're doing that as we speak. So throughout the session, participants can ask us questions using the Slido tool. You'll see the Slido codes at the bottom of each of the slide of the presentation. Interaction with Slido is, of course, voluntary, and you may opt to remain anonymous. If you give us your name, you are hereby giving us consent to processing your personal data. So you can join us at every point with the Slido in the code that you see on screen. And by doing so, you can send and upvote the questions that you want to hear answered at the end of the webinar. The questions will be shown on the screen and managed at the end of the webinar via live session. And throughout, you will have some EMA colleagues addressing the questions in writing to save time at the end of the session. I will be verbally addressing questions unanswered and top voted at the end of the session, but please note we will try to select the ones that pertain to data governance, which is the topic of today's webinar. At the end of the session, we can still have some unanswered questions, and this could be due to high volume of questions or if we do need assistance of somebody who's not available today to address them. And if that happens, we will address them, the most relevant questions on an FAQ document. We may ask you to ask specific questions also to service desk if we need particular context to be able to support you with the question that you have. So please bear with us, use Slido, put all your questions there. We will do our best effort to address them, and towards the end of the session, I will address the most top voted ones that pertain to data governance. Today's presentations will be made available in the SPOR portal document session, also at EMA events webpage, where you already have a first version of the presentation already published in case you want to follow it locally. The recordings will be made available in due course in EMA YouTube channel and also at EMA events webpage. So starting with today's webinar, the topic is about how we govern SPOR data. And my name is Isabel Cicero. I am the responsible for the SPOR data services in Europe. I'm the head of regulatory data management, and I will be covering how we manage the data and how we govern all of the SPOR domains. So I'm happy to announce and to start the kickoff of a full week of SPOR webinars. Today, we have the one dedicated to SPOR data governance. Throughout next week, we will be covering every day an individual topic, starting with referential substance organizations. We have two webinars separated, dedicated to product data management, one for marketing authorization holders for approved products and one for sponsors. And last but not least, we also have a technical webinar for the technical colleagues on the best use of the SPOR application programming interface. And therefore, that's how we close a full week and 2 days of webinars on SPOR. So we do hope that you enjoy these webinars, and we look forward to see you again and the webinars to follow. So today, the focus of this particular webinar is to explain how SPOR data is governed, not necessarily how it's managed, but how do we govern to make sure there's stakeholders input, there's policies in place, and also to provide a high-level context of the other topics you will see in the SPOR week. So in the other week, the rest of the webinars, you'll be seeing the details of the processes within each of them, and today is an overview of how those things come together and how we align the processes and the principles across the 4 SPOR domains, even if they're slightly different. So I will be talking about what is the SPOR data governance framework, which means which aspects do we consider to best govern how we manage the SPOR data. And they're in essence the ones you see there. I'll be talking a little bit about the strategy, a little bit about how our processes are structured, about policies and standards. In previous webinars, we received a suggestion that we should have at least a small break for people to do their bio breaks. And then we'll be picking up with roles and responsibilities on how we govern SPOR. We will be picking up enablement of data governance and specifically how you can interact with us. And I will be wrapping up with key takeaways and conclusions before we jump into questions. So in essence, that's the 5 aspects that we will cover around SPOR data governance. So what is this data governance framework? And before we jump into the details, just to clarify what we will be talking about. So day-to-day processing of SPOR data, we call that data management. And the details of our day-to-day processing you will find in the individual SPOR webinars, how we manage substances, referentials, organizations, and products. We'll be talking a little bit briefly how we deliver new and changed capabilities to improve the way that we manage the data, but it's not yet the focus of today's webinar. So the main focus is data governance, is how do we control that SPOR data is managed as it should be and that is used as it should be. And to do that, we have a series of 5 aspects that we consider that help us guide how we govern how the data is managed and used. So I'll be talking about strategy, processes, policies, organization and roles, and last but not least, enablement, which is also how you can interact with us. So what are these aspects of how we manage and use the data? Starting with strategy, we look at network strategies, we look at portfolio priorities, and we look at these things to provide a focus and a high-level course of action towards high-level goals of the network. So we manage data to serve a bigger purpose, and it's these strategies that kind of guide us what are the big topic areas that we need to address in the coming year. So this is a long-term, high-level course of action that guides our planning of activities. We look at processes, not just to look of where the SPOR processes fit into the overall regulatory context. Do we come before, after, during the procedures and how, but also to look at processes for consistent and adequate processing of data to make sure that we have always consistent rules, consistent instructions for everybody, that everybody is following the same process, and therefore we have a consistent outcome at the end of how we manage the data. We look at policies and standards to provide principles that structure how the data is handled through our day-to-day operations. So we apply internationally recognized standards, we apply legislations, and these are high-level guiding principles that as a public agency, as a data management service provider, we have to follow. Very importantly, and this is a topic that we receive lots of questions, we look at organizations and roles to define consultations, reportings, and decision-making structures. So typically you ask us, who decides this change? How can I get input? Who do I consult? Who do I escalate if I have a problem? So this is covered under what we call organization and roles. And last, we have what we call enablement, which is how we guarantee that there is a continuous improvement of our data management processes, how we build a data-driven culture, and pretty much linked to this is how do we collect feedback from the users to make sure we take that feedback on board on that continuous improvement. So these are the 5 pillars, if you want, that we kind of look at to guarantee that we govern how data is managed and how data is used in the SPOR domains. Oh, apologies. So starting with turning strategy into planning. As I mentioned, EMA provides master data management services on substances, products, organizations, and referentials. And the whole vision is that this would enhance the quality of the medicinal product data used by the network, by the pharmaceutical industry, by the stakeholders in support of all and possible regulatory activities in EU. So it's a very ambitious goal. So how do we ensure that we cover the needs of the network and these different stakeholders? First and foremost, we look at the European Medicines Regulatory Network strategies, and these provide the long-term direction for the business areas. I will be explaining what those are, and you will see that this is where we find what's the focus, whether it's innovation, whether it's supply chain. This is what gives us the view of what are the key business areas that the network overall is pursuing in the next couple of years. Then we translate those business areas' priorities into areas of investment, and we use the portfolio roadmap to guide us. There's two documents that we normally refer to, and this portfolio roadmap is what normally would give us the long-term direction for the major investments that we have to do to support and to deliver these business capabilities that were set out by the strategy. And last but not least, once we know what projects, what IT delivery solutions we have in the pipeline, we also do our operational planning to determine what data quality improvements we need to put in place, what extra capacity, what activities we need to do to support these projects that have been prioritized. And these are shared via the SPOR webinars, such as an example of what we're doing next week. So overall, we look at long-term strategic areas provided by the business value. We prioritize that in yearly plans across different value streams in the portfolio roadmap, and we then determine our operational planning to support those activities that are ongoing and have been prioritized. Starting with the strategies, and you have at the left-hand side of the slide, you have the links if you want to look at what these strategies are about. And overall, we start by looking at the EMA Regulatory Science Strategy to 25, where SPOR supports the key goals of this strategy, defining the scientific areas that we will invest. We have the European Medicines Agency's network strategy, also to 25, which defines the key priority areas. And those areas are availability and accessibility of medicines. So that's why you would see also in the portfolio that shortages and ESMP has been a key driver that was already defined by a network strategy. Other priorities would be data analytics, digital tools, digital transformation, and again, linking to what you will see in the portfolio, you see that we have activities in digitalizing our application forms, in digitalizing our systems, in making data a central tool to link all these solutions together. You also see another area of priority on this strategy, which is innovation, promoting research and clinical trials, for example. That's why we continue investing in delivering those capabilities. Another area that we have is antimicrobial resistance, and that's why you will see that one of the use cases that we are supporting is the ASU, so antimicrobial sales and use in Europe, which is a network priority. Another priority is supply chain challenges, and again, that will link to activities that we are doing in the portfolio to address this and to address shortages. And last but not least, we also have aspects of sustainability and operational excellence, better decision making for the network. All these 6 priorities, so SPOR is specifically referred in 5 of this in this particular strategy. So that's how important it is and how data and master data has been accounted for the business strategies of the network. Moving on to the next strategic paper that we normally refer to, we have the European Medicines Regulatory Network Data Standardization Strategy. And in this strategy, there's a whole chapter dedicated to SPOR and IDMP and standardization of medicinal product for the benefits and all the use cases of the network. So these are the key 3 strategies that are underpinning longer term work for SPOR. Now, if you pay close attention, a lot of these things are ending up next year. So work is already ongoing to review these strategies beyond 25 to extend them at least until 28. And the ongoing discussion seems to still refer that we need master data and that medicinal product data is a key pillar to enable the business strategies of the network. Particularly on the last piece of strategy, there's also work ongoing on an European Medicines Regulatory Network data strategy, and that one is further advanced. And I can already advance that we are foreseeing a public consultation on this particular data strategy after October. So watch this space. We will be announcing a public consultation on what we will do with data beyond 25 already in the next couple of weeks. So at a high level, we have strategies in place that guide us towards the future. Those strategies are being reviewed, and we can expect that we will continue to see activities in the area of data and specifically SPOR in the coming future. With regards to portfolio drivers and how we align the use of data with business and IT capabilities development. So as it stands, the current portfolio activities that are supporting or delivering SPOR IT new capabilities are being delivered by what we call product lifecycle management value stream. And in essence, what we're doing is we're continuing the work on product management services, so on PMS, to support other portfolio epics such as ES&P for shortages, electronic application forms, EPIs, EASUs, and so on. And what we are doing in this portfolio is we're delivering more enrichment capabilities for companies to complete the product data with details such as manufacturers, structured package details, data carriers, and we are also looking at a possibility to upgrade the FHIR messaging to the next level of the standard, which is called R5. At the moment, we don't have specific portfolio activities prioritized for any of the other domains of SPOR, so no activities for substances, referentials, or OMS, just maintenance. Big activities remain and are foreseen to remain around PMS and product management services. Now, in parallel to that, we may have also activities that drive a little bit more operational work. So at the top, we covered things that we deliver new solutions, new IT capabilities. At the bottom, we look at activities that make us do more data management work. And what we've seen is that we have increased the monitoring and our data quality activities around medicinal product data, particularly to minimize migration synchronization issues across XCV-MPD, SciMed, PMS, in all the consuming systems that already use PMS data, such as IRIS, EAF, and we're also increasing our validation of new packages entered in XCV-MPD. So if you attend the XCV-MPD webinars, you will see all the operational work that we're doing to support the increase of usage of that medicinal product data. We're also launching product data mapping services to assist NCAs with the initial implementation of PMS, and that's something you can also hear more about in the XCV-MPD webinar. And for referentials, organizations, and substances, we are providing services as needed for different use cases such as data mappings, data cleansings, and change requests that companies, users, NCAs submit to us. So last but not least, and I will not go into the details, so we look at all those strategies, we look at the portfolio, and every year we prepare a plan for SPOR that looks more or less like this, and that you will see in every webinar next week. So quarter by quarter, we plan what activities we will do in terms of maintaining and improving our customer services, so the service desk that we provide to you, what activities we do to maintain and improve the data management services, the cleansings, the change requests, the mappings, how we can improve the quality of the data that we manage with profiling, with enrichments that we have in the pipeline, We also have a dedicated work stream around documentation, because in the past, most users have given us feedback that they want more clearer or simpler documentation. So we aim to have activities to provide easy to use documentation for you. And very importantly, what we're doing today and what we try to do every quarter is we have dedicated webinars and communication activities with our users to create awareness and visibility and give you an opportunity to ask us questions and interact with us. So you will see that every quarter there is a little bit of an awareness activity, engagement activity with our customers. And at the bottom, we also consider activities around information management, so a few improvements on our solutions, and you will see activities also on the prioritized epics, what it is that we're working towards supporting. So if you attend the webinars next week, for each of the domains, we always recap and we always let you know what we're doing across all of these pillars to support the strategies, the portfolio, and what's the operational work that we are prioritizing in the near future. So we've covered the strategy part. So what are the big drivers that guide us forward? Now we're going to move into the processes. Where do we fit into the business context, and what processes do we follow to ensure that data across the different domains of SPOR is managed consistently? So, and we look at processes at 3 different levels, and we have a specific name for that. At a very high level, which we call operating model, we look at how our data management activities fit in the regulatory business context. So do we come in during a procedure, before a procedure, and how does the data flow from SPOR into the different regulatory procedures? And at the moment, industry and NCAs pre-register and update SPOR data before they prepare regulatory applications and submissions, and then industry submits authorized product data for XCVMPD, PMS, and for the benefit of other consuming systems that need medicinal product data. So at a very high level, we come in before the regulatory procedures. Then in terms of how we carry out our own processes when we're approached before the regulatory procedures, we've grouped our data management process into chunks. And we provide what we call data stewardship activities, which are things that are triggered upon request or on the data itself. We provide customer services, so not only do we manage the data, but we also support you with issues and questions around that data. And a little bit more on the back end, we have what we call our data quality management processes and service management processes, which I will elaborate further on. So this is the type of processes that we carry out, and you will see that they're consistent across the 4 SPOR domains. So every SPOR domain also applies these high-level processes, and that's how we ensure consistency across domains. And last but not least, of course, for every change request, for every cleansing, we create data, we read data, we update data, and sometimes we don't delete, but we make non-current or deprecate data that shouldn't be used anymore. And this is the operations that we do daily that you'll hear on the SPOR webinars. So starting with the high level, which I already explained, at the moment where we fit in the regulatory procedures is that there is a pre-registration, so applicants requests new and updated SPOR data before regulatory application. So you need to pre-register a substance even before you submit a scientific advice or a clinical trial application or an electronic application. Then applicants can then use that substance organization and referential data in their regulatory applications, and then they will submit them using EAF. And once the product is approved, they will submit the data to XCVMPD. In the future, and already transitionally, what we're working towards is that the data that applicants will use in EAF can be reused by those electronic application forms and PMS, made available to XCVMPD and every other consuming system that requires medicinal product information. Moving on to what are the big chunk and high-level processes that every SPOR domain has. So this is where it's consistent across all the SPOR domains. Users can interact with us with two folds. They can either apply for change requests or they can contact us requesting help desk, service desk, customer services. We provide data management, data stewardship activities by processing change requests, which are requests upon the activity, the action, the trigger of a user. But we also provide proactive service-led data curation. And we do mappings, enrichments. We also do cleansing on our own initiative, not necessarily requiring a request from the users. If the users contact us for customer service, we will be processing requests of information, so questions. We will be processing requests for service, some things which are more complex that don't come as change requests. And we also deal with incidents or any issues that are reported to us. A little bit less visible to users. We for every data that we manage, we do sampling and checking of every performed activity. So if we do 1,000 change requests, we sample a few to make sure that we are really applying consistent rules and business process across the different team members. And we call that quality control. We also have an activity that we call data profiling, which is looking across all of the data that we manage in SPOR to make sure that it can still adheres to the business rules that we have and to the patterns, that it's still consistent. So at the top box, these are inspections of activities we've performed. And on the second box, these are inspections throughout the entirety of the data to make sure that the whole data follows the same business rules. And we have also a third activity linked to data quality management, which is about investigating when we find errors, investigating root causes and looking for process improvements to make sure that the errors that we spotted, either in quality control or data profiling, don't ever reoccur. So a bit more proactive process improvement. Last but not least, also to the benefit of this, we do service management to liaise with data governance when there's issues that need to be escalated, to liaise with IT delivery when we need to improve some capabilities in our solutions. We also do performance management, not just invoicing of the companies that provide and help us manage the data, but also making sure we adhere to key performance indicators and measurements. For example, making sure that we adhere to establish service level agreements, that we do the activities within the timelines that we've committed to do it so that you have a good experience overall. And we also look at customer satisfaction once a year, which I will explain later, to make sure that your input is considered and taken on board for future improvements. So overall, these 4 pillars of processes is what ensures that we are managing the data across the SPOR domains in a similar way. You will see this across all of the SPOR webinars. You'll see change requests across the different domains. You'll see proactive data curation, data mapping across all the domains, and so on. Now, moving on to policies and standards. So policies and standards provide a broad principle of operation. They give structure to how we do the data handling. And of course, SPOR is implementing very well-known international standards. We are implementing ISO IDMP standards. We have already implemented 2 ISO IDMP standards with a referential management system. We are implementing ISO standards for substances, and we are adopting FHIR exchange message to exchange information on products and substances with the network. We also comply with EU legislations and other relevant EMA policies. And very recently, and you will also hear on the OMS webinar, we underwent an extensive process change and a lot of checks, a lot of discussions to be able to manage individuals in OMS according to the regulation 2018 1725, which refers to the protection of natural persons. So every time we do a process change, we also need to see what other legislation, what other policies apply, and we do extensive checks to make sure that our processes adhere to them and are still compliant with the different legislations. Specific to each SPOR policies, we have data quality rules, which are specific to each domain. An example being for OMS, our policies are described in a document called OMS Data Quality Rules. For RMS, our policies are described individually for each list in the list information document. And you will also find extensive policies and data quality rules in the XCVMPD guidance. So overall, all the pillars apply the same legislations and policies, and the details and the specificity of each domain are documented in individual documents that explain where the differences are and where the details are for each domain. And this will also be covered in the webinars next week. So where can you find information on all these processes and all our guidance documents to understand what we do in SPOR? In the SPOR portal and in the EV restricted area, you can find a lot of documentation on how to use the SPOR services. You also have information on how to use XCVMPD and a lot of technical documentation. In the EMA account management portal, you can find guidance on how to obtain access to EMA systems and how to create EMA accounts and request the user roles for the different activities that you want to perform. On our corporate website, you have high-level information on what's the vision of SPOR and what were the SPOR projects. You also have related information and documents, and you also have information on XCVMPD. If you're looking for training opportunities, EMA Info Channel contains all the videos of the different SPOR webinars with lots of practical tips and tricks and questions raised throughout those webinars. You also have XCVMPD e-learning, and there's also training organized by DIA. And again, next week, the webinars will be explaining exactly where to find more information if you are looking for training opportunities. And last but not least, if you still can't find what you're looking for in any of these other four areas, we have the EMA service desk where you can always send us a question and we will be able to guide you which documents, where to find information, or even provide you tailored answered questions to your needs. These should be submitted via the ServiceNow portal. So we believe that there's a wealth of information, maybe too much. That's why it's also one of the pillars that we are doing to try to streamline and help you navigate the documents that we have available on the SPOR services. And basing on previous webinars, we were told that it's nice to have a little bit of a short break. So I propose that we have a mini 15-minute break, I don't know, and I will resume shortly. Called the Network Data Steering Group. If we move to the bottom right side, when we talk about data governance and specifically how SPOR data is used and applied in different business processes, the roles that we consider are what we call the process owner, which is typically the user or project group implementing the use of SPOR in a given business process. And we also have an escalation point to the Network Data Steering Group. And last, when we talk about IT delivery, and we're talking about new changed IT capabilities to manage and govern SPOR, the roles around here are what we call the value stream owners and the different agile governance bodies, and with input and advice from the network data steering group. And central to this, the person doing the whole coordination day to day of all these activities, and very critical to the success of passing the messages across the different areas of responsibility, is the SPOR business lead. And you will see that we have one for each SPOR domain. So when we talk about roles and responsibilities, please bear in mind that there's different areas of responsibilities, different aspects, either day-to-day management or how data is managed, how data is used, and also IT delivery. And there will be different roles and responsibilities within those areas of competence. Starting with how we do day-to-day management of SPOR data. As I mentioned, we have data stewardship, which ensures that data processes, policies, and standards are in place and are being followed. We have a business lead for each domain, and you can see there the names of who they are. And you will be able to see them also next week when we do the presentations of the different SPOR domains. So for substances, we have Pedro. For products, business lead, we have Marcos and Veronica. Organizations, you will see Deborah. And referentials, we now have Jaume back, but he has been temporarily supported by Veronica. And on day-to-day, we have a structure of EMA data stewards who provide the operational support to the data management activities. Depending on the domain, we have what we call data ownership, which is the ultimate deciding bodies of how we create and modify the data. For substances, we refer to the substance validation group, which is a group of experts that define the business rules of how we should manage substances. For products, the owners of the data, the ultimate accountable for the truth of that data, are the industries, the marketing authorization holders. For organizations, EMA is responsible to determine those rules. And for referentials, we actually have a mixed, because depending on the rule, we have the list, we have different data owners. So we have lists which are owned by EDQM, lists which are owned by ISO, lists which are owned by WHO, and lists which are indeed owned by EMA. Now, at the top layer of this, we have what we call service ownership. Whereas the data owners decide how to create and modify the data, service ownership decides and has overall accountability for the services itself and the quality and availability of the data. And the first point of call is myself as the service manager. So I'm that box there in the center, head of regulatory data management. And the top layer of this is the head of strategic platforms, Petri Pakunen, and Hilmar Hammond, the head of information management. So day-to-day stewardship is ensured by business leads and data stewards. Details and rules of how to manage the content of the data, what business rules to apply, are defined by the data owners, but accountability of the quality of the service first and foremost lies with me and can be escalated to the service owners above me. So that's the difference. There are different responsibilities. So how does this process, a typical flow of how data is managed? We have the data stewards who execute the day-to-day data management, and it could be the data cleansings, the change requests, or even the customer services. We have the business lead who coordinates all the activities, who plans what should happen first, what cleansings we do first, and how to prioritize and allocate resources. If there's any escalation in terms of quality of the service, or if the SLAs are not met, or if there is an issue or concern from a particular user, the first point of escalation should be the service manager, i.e. myself. And if you have any particular escalation point of a strategic nature, for example, where to put big investment that we're not investing enough on a particular domain or a particular capability, then the escalation point for those strategic matters are directly dealt by the service owner. So that's how the responsibilities are divided. If we move on to the next pillar of data governance and we start thinking of how SPOR data is managed and used, at the bottom of the pyramid, let's say, in the wider group, so not by far not the least important, maybe the most important, but the wider group, are the user groups that ensure the stakeholder views are considered. And we have, for 3 of the domains of SPOR, we have a key user group. At the moment, we have a bit of a transitional circumstance that while we're implementing PMS, the views of the stakeholders and the users are directly represented by PMS subject matter experts. So they're not yet part of the key user group, but when PMS is fully implemented, we envisage that a similar structure would be deployed for PMS as well. Making the bridge of these different stakeholder views and the governance bodies, we have a layer that we call data leadership that ensures there's some agility to the data management changes. So for example, if we have to do small changes to SPOR data management processes, a business rule here and there, the business leads are empowered to decide on these small changes so that they don't have to escalate each and every change to the data governance bodies. And when indeed there is a major change to how we manage the SPOR data, these get escalated first to the network data steering group, and who is supported by the EMA data board, which is an equivalent group. And if the matter is really strategic that affects the whole network, then the matter is then escalated to the heads of medicines agency and the management board. You may have noticed, if you've seen similar presentations, we used to have a group called Network Data Board. That was our main escalation group. And there was also a group called Big Data Steering Group. And recently, there is a new group that has been unifying these 2 groups, and it's now been renamed to Network Data Steering Group. So whereas in the past we used to have 2 groups and one specifically addressing the matters of SPOR, now we have a recently unified group called Network Data Steering Group that brings experts for both big data as well as master data and standards. And that's the point of escalation at the moment. So again, how does this governing of the SPOR data happen in practice? If we see a typical flow of events, typically we would have the data stewards executing the day-to-day activities, and they could collect issues via service desk or change requests. And an example we had is a user wanted to capture large volume receivers addresses in OMS. The data stewards then escalate the matter to the business lead, who understands the issues, the requirements, looks at options, and consults the key user group. The key user group will then extend the consultation to its own peers and would come back and advise on how we should change the rules for SPOR. And in this particular case, this was a problem specialized in Germany, so there was a specific consultation out to German experts. And as the change in this case was not substantial, the business lead may have decided to implement this particular change in the OMS data quality rules and start implementing it in the registration of the organizations. In different cases, for example, other examples like dealing with multiple combined locations where the changes would be significant. In those particular cases where the changes are significant, the matter is then escalated to the Network Data Steering Group and supported by the EMA Data Board, who would then decide whether the changes will be applicable or not. And in that case, they will be reflected on the OMS data quality rules. And if you're wondering throughout this process, how are you informed if there has been a change in rules? Specifically, we publish any changes to our policies in the SPOR portal. And what we also try to do is that we do frequently, every quarter, we do SPOR webinars, and that's where you can also find what's new, what's planned, and if there's any specific change that you need to be aware of. If the plan is really substantial, in that case, we will possibly consider a dedicated communication, email, or newsletter to the impacted stakeholders, but I don't believe that has been the case. So most of the cases, if there are changes of how the data is managed, they're published in the SPOR portal, and every quarter, if you attend our webinars, we try to do a little summary of what we've changed, what we're planning to change, to provide that transparency for you. Now, if we start thinking of how SPOR data is used, and this was also very frequent questions we used to have. Typically, we start the process by collecting feedback from the key user groups who have concern that the data is not being consistently used in different processes, or that they're not clear how it should be used. And we collect that feedback via the data stewards, and we also escalate to the business lead. The business lead consults the network data steering group to understand the issues and the options. And the network data steering group would advise the process owners on the best practices. So if we see inconsistent practices across processes, the network data steering group would provide an advice. But ultimately, it is just an advice. Even the network data steering group cannot impose how exactly SPOR data is used on a given business process. The decision lies with the person we call the process owner, who is really implementing the use of SPOR data in a given process. For example, in the case of when we try to discuss whether OMS would become mandatory for a centralized procedure and how exactly that would be rolled out, the process owner for that rollout was the human division of EMA, and they were the ones driving the timelines, the rules of how this would be rolled out in the electronic application forms. We, of course, support them. SPOR team provides advice. The network data steering group provides advice, but ultimately it is the colleagues implementing the use of SPOR in a given business process that define the rules of how SPOR will be used in that process. And we then ultimately, the business leads just steer any necessary changes that are required to adjust to those needs in terms of timelines, in terms of cleansing of data, and in terms of documentation to provide awareness to users. So if you are wondering, if SPOR is going to be used in a given business process, who should you ask? You should directly ask the colleagues implementing SPOR data in that business process. It could be the CITES colleagues, it could be the IRIS colleagues, it could be the SMP colleagues. They're the ones who define the rules. We only collaborate in supporting, providing information, FAQs, supporting with webinars and information to stakeholders, but they're the ones who really define the rules of how and when it will be used on a process. And last aspect of governance is, how do we govern new and changed IT capabilities to modernize SPOR data? And there's lots of information on EMA website of agile governance. So I will keep it a little bit brief. So each of the different SPOR domains is allocated to what we call different value streams. We have different product teams delivering different solutions. So we have a dedicated product team for OMS, one for RMS, one for SMS, and one for PMS. We have dedicated product owners, so leads of those teams, and we have a common epic owner across of them, which is myself, who I'm also the responsible manager for these services. Each of these different services are allocated to different value streams. So organizations and referentials are allocated to managing the agency value stream. Substance is allocated to a research and development value stream, and products is assigned to the product lifecycle management value stream. And you also see the context there. And these value streams are expected to align the delivery of these IT solutions to provide business value for the business areas, either for managing the agency or promoting research and development or supporting product life cycle. And you should also notice that there is an alignment of these value streams with also the strategic areas of the strategies I mentioned before, supporting innovation and research, supporting digitalization on the product lifecycle management, and also supporting monitoring and other priorities. And at the top, we have different governance bodies that provide direction and govern the major investments. And if you click here, you can see all the different bodies like the portfolio board, like the network portfolio advisory group, and so on, that will have different ceremonies and help steer where the investments happen and what type of IT capabilities get prioritized or not. So again, in practice and translating this into a sequence of events, typically the demands and needs and feedbacks from users are collected from different sources. We collect lots of feedback from our key user groups. We also collect feedback from service desk and change requests, even from our customer satisfaction surveys. There's always suggestions of what we should do to improve our solutions. All this feedback gets escalated to the business lead and product owner, who consolidate everything and liaise with the value stream owners and EPIC owners to prioritize them. They are then put forward as a suggestion to these different agile governance bodies who provide a strategic direction and who will ultimately prioritize what gets done or what gets postponed. The Network Data Steering Group also provides an advice. Is this a strategic area for data? What's the value of this? Which supports the decision making of these different agile governance bodies. And then once there is a decision that, yes, this is a good capability, it has value, it has been prioritized, the different teams will then start implementing it. But just to say that there's different mechanisms that we use to collect the feedback and to then escalate to understand what will be prioritized. In terms of how you can stay informed, you can stay informed via different agile ceremonies and events. These are advertised in the EMA website, and I particularly highlight the importance of the quarterly system demo. So every quarter there is a system demo where anybody can join in and they can provide and should provide feedback on the solutions that are being implemented. So please join those demos and provide the feedback there, because it is actually considered. And we do a similar thing on the SPOR front. Even though we're not delivering IT capabilities, we're also trying to do quarterly webinars. And please do join our webinars and provide feedback there so that we have early visibility of where we can adjust. So on that note is the perfect segue to enablement, and this is all about how we continuously improve and how we can collect your feedback. So in terms of continuous improvement, we do have key performance indicators. We look at what data we're managing, how is it growing? Is it growing faster than usual? How are we updating it? We look at data management key performance indicators on how many change requests we get, how many data mapping services, how many tickets, how are we doing in terms of doing these things within an agreed service level agreement, i.e. an agreed timeline. We looked at how many data quality errors we're detecting when we sample and see our activities, and we also look at aspects of data quality, and we have some data quality metrics. So we have a monthly and quarterly monitoring of these things, And we are sharing them also next week in the webinars. So for each individual SPOR domain, you will see the statistics, and we also publish them once a year in the SPOR portal. So just a brief recap. This is by far a small sample of what we have. As of January, at the beginning of the year, we had the following volumes of data, and these, so we had nearly 70,000 substances already and 200,000 substance names. The count of products is from XCVMPD because we had a mix of products and packages, also active, not active. We have a different split and details on what that count of products is. We have nearly 51,000 organizations and 90,000 locations. We have 215 lists, and we have 137 thousand terms already registered in RMS. In terms of growth rate and change rate, it comes as no surprise that the biggest changes we see are in terms of organizations. So we have 4% of new locations being added every year. But if you look at the update rate, because we're adding mappings to different sources, because we're adding enriching with National Business Registry numbers, with geocode coordinates, you could see that we update 88% and 90% of the locations on a yearly basis. So it's actually a very data that changes very, very frequently. And also similarly to substances, we are updating nearly 30% of substances on a yearly basis with the data cleansings we're doing, with the enrichments and the mappings. So it's actually not for every record we have, we update them also very frequently. Now, very importantly to you, how can you engage and how can you provide feedback to make sure your feedback is considered in our continuous improvement? So we do these webinars a minimum 2 times a year. You may have noticed this year we're actually starting to do it 4 times a year. So we're doubling our engagement opportunities with our customers. We also do a yearly customer satisfaction survey where we send to the registered SPOR users at the end of the year a little survey so that we can compare how well we're doing compared to previous years. We then treat those results and we also published on the SPOR portal. Now, very importantly, your opinion really matters to us and it drives the improvements and the activities we plan for the next year. So please, if you do receive that email on your inbox, it should take only a couple of minutes. We would really appreciate if you could take the time to provide us feedback. We are planning to launch this customer satisfaction survey starting on the week of 15 to 18. So after we finish the webinars, and it would end at the beginning of November so that we can still treat the results and prepare for publication at the beginning of the following year to take into consideration for the plan for the following year. So please, your opinion does matter to us. We do a lot of work to look at the comments you provide, to address them, to plan them. Please take that opportunity if you get the email on your inbox to give us the feedback. And also in terms of engagement, last but not least, another way of engaging with us is via the training, and you have a wealth of videos, you have e-learning possibilities for XCVMPD as well as training provided by DIA. So it's also a way that you can learn more and provide more informed feedback to us. So how to stay connected? Right now we're doing this whole week of SPOR webinars where we do a more detailed explanation of what we're doing. We will be launching this customer satisfaction survey in October and hoping to have it completed by November. And we are planning to continue the cadence of quarterly webinars on SPOR, starting with another one already planned for January. So we will do it in January, and every quarter we will do a small status update webinar so you can keep up to date with what we've recently accomplished and what we're planning to do next. And if there's any changes that are worth bringing to your attention, that's the venue that we will use to inform you. Now, wrapping up, so we're nearly there. When we talk about data governance, very importantly, we're talking about how we manage and use SPOR data. And I talked about 5 pillars that help us do that. So at a very high level, we look at strategies and the network portfolio roadmap and the operational yearly planning. We have these in place, and this is what enables us to focus our actions around the value that the network expects to achieve from the data. We consider processes, and we have operating models of where we fit in the regulatory context, as well as data management processes that are defined and operational and consistently applied across the 4 domains. We talked about policies and standards, and very critical to SPOR, we apply international standards such as IDMP and FHIR. We also apply EMA policies, and we have domain-specific policies documented and data quality rules documented and available in the SPOR portal and XEVMPD website. We talked about organization and roles, and we have governance structures in place. Reporting and decision-making lines are well defined, so we know who to report to and who would advise who would decide. And these cover day-to-day operations, data management, as well as how to manage the data and how to use the data, as well as how to deliver IT new capabilities that we require. And last topic that I covered was on the enablement and continuous improvement. So we have metrics and monitoring in place, as well as reporting. And we also have opportunities to engage with our customers via quarterly webinars and also via the yearly customer satisfaction survey. So overall, we apply a series of measures to make sure that how we manage the data, how we engage, how we continuously involved is properly governed and consulted with the relevant stakeholders. So we have a structured approach to how the data is governed based on best data management practices. So this follows standard data management practices. It's not something that EMA invented. And particularly today, I try to give you a holistic view of how these things connect, but of course details for each of the different domains you will be able to hear and ask about in the webinars next week. Before we dive into questions to me, and also similar what we did last time, we have a little quiz to you to make sure that you really understood the key messages, and also to promote a little bit of healthy competition. So if you bear with us, I will briefly switch to Slido. Managed to find
Okay, we're going to give you a couple of seconds so you can join, because the questions go really fast.
So yes,
and
please bear with us. A little game. Join us in Slido.
Perfect. You can see we have a lot of people joining, so I'm going to start.
So please answer. Changes that have significant impact on SPOR data management are decided by the Network Data Steering Group. Is this true or false? It is indeed true, and I'm happy to see that 81% got it right. So congratulations, colleagues. And to Marel Veno, very quick and correct answer. Next question. I should submit operational queries to SPOR Business Lead directly. Even better, the correct answer was false, and I'm happy to see that 96% had this right. So again, Marel, indeed, thank you very much. The operational questions should be to our service desk so that we do have a bigger team available to answer quickly to your questions. Next question. I should submit any concerns, complaints about a particular service to the service owner, i.e. the head of information management division. This is false. If you have any operational concerns, you should submit to the service manager, which is myself. The head of division should only be escalated for strategic matters in terms of priorities, high-level resources or allocations of the team capacity to a given topic. And we see a constant trend. So congratulations. Next question. I can engage with SPOR services via webinars and customer satisfaction survey and also provide my feedback to the key user group. Is this true or false? This is true, and 99% had it right. Perfect. And again, a constant trend. Can anybody? Congratulations. Last question. I should ask the SPOR team or business lead how SPOR is used in a given business process. Is this true or false? The correct answer is false. You should ask to the process team implementing it in SPOR. We can, of course, support and provide some clarifications, but the best person to answer is really the process owner, the ones implementing the use of SPOR in a given regulatory context. So congratulations, Marel Veno. I don't know if that's how you spell the name, but thank you for having all right answers and always very fast. We should recruit you. So I hope you enjoyed that little icebreaker. I suppose now the questions are back to me. So I will be looking at the Q&A that we have on screen. For slide 18, SPOR data management processes, you mentioned that data cleansing is also performed without user request. How will the user be informed about the changes made? So indeed, data cleansing is performed without any request. So if we find that there's a duplicate, if we find that there's a typo in the name, that we need to correct something, we will do that. We don't necessarily inform the user specifically or consistently. We'd have a functionality similar to this for RMS. So in RMS, if you can subscribe to the lists, you will get notifications that the lists have changed, not necessarily which terms and what has changed, but currently we don't have that functionality implemented for substances or for organizations. We don't have a way of knowing which user wants to know of changes to which particular record. It's something we have on our to-do list, but at the moment it's not a capability we have in place. What we do advise is for companies, because we change data, as you could see, for organizations, nearly 80% of the organizations gets changed somehow, either with enrichment of the business registry numbers, of geocodes, or by populating the addresses. We recommend that companies use our SPOR API. And by using the SPOR API, you can quickly identify which records are relevant to you and whether those records have changed. So that's the recommended approach. A lot of the data changes very frequently. And instead of spamming users with a lot of information, we really recommend companies to invest in using the SPOR API, identifying which records are relevant, and creating those mechanisms on their own side, because we're talking about significant volume of changes, not necessarily a once a month email that we would send to users. The next question, who is part of the key user group? So we have nominated subject matter experts that represent the national member states. Typically, we would have representatives of big national member states, small and medium national member states. We also have representative members of the different industry associations. So they've been nominated in the past by different industry associations and also by their expertise in the field. So we have NCA and industry representatives in the key user group. How can a SPOR data user like UPD or PMS be sure that they use the SOR data correctly and also handle modifications to SOR data correctly in their product? I am especially referring to the status current, non-current, provisional, nullified. So let me see if I understand the question. We have for the referentials indeed an indication of the status, which is an indication whether we recommend it to be used or not. So we recommend users to use current, and wherever possible, do not use non-current and do not use nullified. But it's a recommendation. We haven't specifically blocked that those terms are used in systems. Now, I understand that in UPD there is some restrictions and there is a data quality framework that requires NCAs and companies to avoid the use of these non-currents and nullified terms. Specifically, I don't understand. If you want to know whether you can use it or whether you should use it, you should ask the colleagues around UPD what are the rules for their process. In PMS, at the moment, we're still allowing companies to use non-current terms. We're still allowing them to use, of course, current and provisional, and we are trying to do as much as possible any corrections, and I don't believe we are using nullified terms. So PMS, I suppose my team can address it. For UPD, you should ask that specific team what are their particular business rules. When you decide to change the status of a value from current to non-current for a substance in SMS, for instance, do you previously discuss with UPD or PMS product owner to evaluate the impact of such a change? So in short, the answer is no, we don't discuss. So we only make something or a substance from current to non-current when we identify that is incorrect to begin with, and the case of duplicates. We mark it. We have some process to check whether there is an impact, and we're trying to plan so that we could do those corrections after the different projects have been implemented, but we don't normally check each and every product before doing that. We only do that for XCVMPD at the moment. For which year is slide 14? In the top is 23 is mentioned. I don't remember by heart which is slide 14. I suppose that was the operational plan. If you give me a second. Yes, exactly. So slide 14 was the one with the operational plan. That was an illustration only. It's not a detailed plan because there wasn't any activity on that particular slide. My point was that slides similar to those you will see in next week's webinars with the activities that we're doing for each of the different SPOR domains. And apologies if I didn't correct the timelines for 23. My typo, I will do that after the webinar and publish the right timeline. But it's still an illustrative slide of what you will see in next week's webinars. Could you please specify where we can find EMA info channel? So I'm afraid I don't know the address by heart. So what we can do is we can look. I need to ask help from my colleagues to type the message in Slido and to make sure we put it as a link in the presentation if it's not there already.
Yeah, sorry, Isabel, we have just posted the link on the question, so it's already
Okay.
there.
Thank you. I don't know it by heart. Apologies. We had the question, does this webinar concern VMPs? I guess it's veterinary medicinal product. So this was not specific to veterinary medicinal products. We were talking about how we govern the way that we manage substance, organizations, referentials, and products. And indeed, in the area of SPOR, we talk about human products only. Veterinary medicinal products use substance organizations and referentials, so you may have an interest to know how we govern the data, but we're not specifically addressing veterinary products. Will this PowerPoint slide deck be published on the EMA website? Yes, on the events webpage and on the SPOR portal. When we have bigger issues with any SPOR service and we have made a ticket in service now, but the ticket has been on hold for months, should we contact someone in the business directly? If this is a SPOR service and you have a concern with a particular ticket that's been on hold, you can contact me directly. If it's any other ticket in service desk, then I can forward it to the relevant colleague, but I'm not sure I can directly help it myself. So if you mean business, my team is the business when it concerns SPOR management, and you're welcome to escalate any matter to my attention. And I think those were the questions at the moment. I don't see anything else on screen. So if we've addressed the questions, I believe we have a small survey also to collect feedback on how was this webinar, how can we improve, did you enjoy the break, what other suggestions you would have. So if you could spare a couple more minutes to address that. So also on Slido, there's a little poll for you. So we do appreciate the feedback. We will try to take it on board for the next round of webinars for January. So I think we're going to leave the Slido poll open. Please feel free to give your feedback. And I look forward to seeing you next week on the remaining SPOR webinars. And until then, I wish you a very nice weekend. So thank you all.